Welcome back to Nighttime History. Today we will be exploring a watchful evening in a medieval library, stepping into the quiet world of those who tended to precious manuscripts and ancient knowledge. Thank you for joining us. Sit back and relax as we dive deep into the hushed halls, where custodians, clerks and caretakers preserved civilization's written treasures through long candlelit nights. You stand at the heavy oak doors of a medieval library as dusk settles over the stone buildings. The last rays of sunlight filter through narrow windows, casting long shadows across the courtyard. You push open the door and step inside, where the air immediately changes. It's cooler here, carrying the distinctive scent of aged parchment, leather bindings and beeswax. The library stretches before you, a long hall with vaulted ceilings that seem to swallow sound itself. Listen to the subtle creaking of wooden shelves as they settle in the evening air. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone floor, each step measured and careful. This is a place where silence reigns, where even whispers feel too loud. The custodians who work here move with practiced quiet, their soft-soled shoes barely making a sound as they go about their evening duties. Watch as the head librarian begins his nightly rounds. He carries a ring of iron keys that jingle faintly with each step. Medieval libraries were fortresses of knowledge, and books were treasures more valuable than gold. The librarian checks each reading stand, ensuring that the heavy chains attached to the books remain secure. These chains, you notice, are not meant to imprison the books, but to protect them. Each volume represents months or even years of a scribe's labour. You follow him deeper into the library, where the last readers of the day are finishing their work. They sit at angled desks, carefully turning pages with clean, dry hands. No food or drink is permitted near the manuscripts. The rules are strict and absolute. A single drop of wine or crumb of bread could destroy irreplaceable text. The readers wear simple linen gloves to protect the pages from the oils of their skin. The evening routine begins in earnest now. Young clerks move between the shelves with soft brushes made from rabbit fur, gently dusting the exposed edges of books. They work methodically, starting from the highest shelves and working downward. Dust is the enemy here, as much as moisture or mice. You watch as one clerk pauses at a particularly old volume, its leather binding cracked with age. He makes a note on his wax tablet. This book will need attention from the bindery. Feel the temperature dropping as night approaches. The thick stone walls that keep the library cool in summer now hold the day's chill. A custodian enters carrying a basket of small braziers, which he places at strategic points throughout the hall. The warmth they provide is minimal, just enough to keep the worst of the dampness at bay. Too much heat would be as damaging as cold, causing the parchment to dry and crack. You notice the windows beginning to darken completely. The library's evening transformation is beginning. During daylight hours, these spaces buzz with quiet activity, scholars copying texts, students studying, clerks cataloguing new acquisitions. But at night, the library becomes something different. It becomes a place of preservation and protection, watched over by a skeleton crew of dedicated caretakers. The head librarian rings a small bell 3 times. This is the signal for the day readers to conclude their work. You watch them close their books carefully, marking their places with thin strips of leather. They bow slightly to the librarian as they leave, a gesture of respect for both the man and the institution he represents. Soon, only the night staff remains. Move now to the scriptorium, connected to the main library by a narrow passage. Even in the evening, work continues here. 2 scribes remain at their desks, taking advantage of the last natural light to finish delicate illumination work. Their brushes, impossibly fine, add touches of gold leaf to capital letters. The gold catches the dying light, seeming to glow from within the pages. The scribes work in absolute concentration. You can hear their breathing, slow and steady, as they apply each careful stroke. One wrong move could ruin hours of work. They mix their pigments fresh each day, ground lapis for blue, malachite for green, cinnabar for red. The recipes are closely guarded secrets, passed down through generations of scribes. As darkness falls completely, the custodians begin lighting the evening lamps. These are not ordinary candles, but specially made lights designed to burn clean and steady. The tallow is rendered multiple times to remove impurities that might smoke and damage the books. Each lamp is placed in a holder designed to catch any drips of hot wax. Nothing is left to chance in this sanctuary of knowledge. You follow one of the younger clerks as he begins his rounds. His job tonight is to check the mousetraps. Mice and rats pose a constant threat to the manuscripts, drawn by the wheat paste used in bindings and the organic materials of the books themselves. The traps are humane when possible. Small cages baited with cheese or grain. The court rodents will be released far from the library grounds come morning. The clerk shows you the other defensive measures. Dried herbs hang in small bundles from the shelves. Lavender, rosemary, and wormwood. Their scent helps repel insects that might otherwise feast on parchment and leather. Cedar blocks are placed strategically throughout the collection. You breathe in the complex aroma, a mixture of herbs, wood, and the underlying mustiness of old books. Listen now to the sounds of the night library. Without the rustling of pages and whispered consultations of daytime, other sounds emerge. The building itself seems to breathe, wood and stone expanding and contracting with the temperature change. Somewhere in the walls, you hear the faint scratching that might be mice, or might simply be the building settling. The custodians know every sound, can distinguish between normal creaking and something that requires investigation. A senior clerk approaches carrying his inventory lists. Every evening, certain valuable manuscripts must be counted and checked. The most precious works, illuminated gospels, rare classical texts, books of hours commissioned by wealthy patrons, are kept in a separate locked chamber. You watch as he produces 3 different keys, each one required to open the heavy iron lock. Inside this inner sanctum, the atmosphere is even more reverent. The books here are wrapped in soft leather covers when not in use. Some are kept in specially made boxes lined with wool. The clerk unwraps one to show you, a gospel book with covers of carved ivory and precious gems. Even in the lamplight it gleams with an otherworldly beauty. He checks it carefully for any signs of damage before wrapping it again with practiced movements. The night watch proper begins now. Medieval libraries never stood completely empty after dark. There was always someone present guarding against fire, theft, and the dozen other calamities that might befall the collection. Tonight's watchman is an older custodian who has held this post for 20 years. He knows every corner of the library, every place where shadows gather, every draught that might blow out a candle. You accompany him on his first round of the night. He carries a special lantern with sides of thin horn that protect the flame from draughts while still allowing light through. His route is always the same. Consistency is key to noticing anything amiss. First, he checks all the windows, ensuring the heavy shutters are properly barred. Then the main doors, testing each lock and bar. The watchman shows you the library's firefighting equipment. Buckets of sand stand ready throughout the hall. In case of fire, sand is preferable to water, which would destroy books as surely as flames. There are also heavy wool blankets that can be used to smother small fires. The greatest fear is a knocked-over candle or lamp. One moment of carelessness could destroy centuries of accumulated knowledge. As you walk through the darkened aisles, the watchman shares the library's evening secrets. He shows you where drafts creep in despite the heavy shutters, where moisture collects on particularly humid nights. These trouble spots require extra vigilance. A clerk follows behind, placing extra cloths and adjusting the protective coverings on vulnerable books. The temperature continues to drop as the night deepens. You pull your cloak tighter, understanding now why the night workers wear such heavy garments. The cold is a constant companion in these stone halls, yet it serves a purpose. Cold slows the activity of insects and the growth of mould. The medieval librarians understood this, even if they couldn't explain the science behind it. Let's stop here for a moment. As we pause in our journey through this medieval library, I want to thank you for being part of our community of nighttime travellers. If you're enjoying this peaceful exploration of history, please consider subscribing to support our channel and turning on notifications so you never miss our nightly journeys into the past. Take a moment to hit the like button if this content is helping you relax tonight. We'd love to know where you're settling into sleep this evening and what time zone you're listening from. Share your cozy spot in the comments below, whether you're tucked into bed, relaxing on the couch, or perhaps taking a nighttime walk. Your support helps us continue creating these gentle escapes into history. Now, let us return to the hushed halls of our medieval library, where the night watch continues and ancient knowledge slumbers peacefully under careful guard. The evening has truly settled in now, and there is still much to explore in these quiet hours before dawn. The midnight hour approaches, and you find yourself in the library's copying room, where a different kind of work continues through the night. Here, elderly scribes who can no longer manage the fine detail work of illumination prepare the materials for tomorrow's labour. Watch as they scrape fresh parchment with curved knives, removing any remaining traces of fat or hair. The rhythmic sound of scraping fills the air, a meditation in itself. Each sheet must be perfectly smooth, perfectly clean. You observe how they test each piece by holding it up to the lamplight, checking for thin spots or imperfections. Parchment was expensive, made from the skins of sheep, goats or calves. Nothing could be wasted. Even scraps were saved for practice work or for making the small tags used to label the shelves. The preparers work with patient precision, knowing that rushed work tonight means ruined manuscripts tomorrow. Move now through the narrow corridor that leads to the binding workshop. Even at this late hour, you find an apprentice bookbinder still at work, repairing a damaged volume by lamplight. His fingers move with surprising speed, restitching a loosened gathering of pages. The thread he uses is linen, waxed for strength and durability. You watch as he creates tiny, perfect stitches, each one placed exactly where the previous binder's holes indicate. The workshop smells of leather and glue. Along the walls hang sheets of leather in various stages of preparation. Some are being stretched on frames, slowly drying to the perfect tension. Others soak in tubs of oak gall solution, which will help preserve them against decay. The apprentice explains in hushed tones how each type of leather serves a different purpose. Calfskin for the finest bindings, pigskin for everyday volumes that need durability, and sometimes even seal or deer hide for books that might face unusual conditions. Listen to the gentle bubbling from the corner where a pot of binding paste simmers over a low fire. The paste must be kept warm and stirred regularly through the night to maintain the proper consistency. Made from wheat starch and water, with secret additions known only to master binders, this humble mixture holds the entire library together. Too thick and it cracks, too thin and pages come loose. The apprentice stirs it every quarter hour, judging its readiness by how it drips from the wooden spoon. You return to the main hall where the night custodian continues his rounds. He shows you the library's collection of reading implements. Not everyone who used the library had perfect vision, and medieval librarians developed various aids for their readers. There are magnifying lenses made from polished crystal, held in frames of horn or bronze. Reading stands that can be adjusted to catch the best light. Even primitive spectacles, their lenses carefully ground by expert craftsmen. The custodian demonstrates the proper way to handle these delicate instruments. Each lens must be wrapped in soft cloth when not in use. The metal parts require regular oiling to prevent rust. You notice how he checks each item against a detailed inventory, accounting for every piece. These reading aids were nearly as valuable as the books themselves, representing significant investments of money and craftsmanship. Feel the deep quiet that has settled over the library now. The building seems to exist outside of time, holding its breath in the darkness. You become aware of every small sound. The whisper of turning pages where a night scholar works by special permission, the soft footfall of slippered feet on stone, the occasional pop from the cooling braziers. This is a quiet different from mere absence of noise. It's a purposeful, protective silence. You follow another clerk to the map room, where the library's collection of charts and geographical works are stored. These require special care, as they're often larger than regular books and made from more delicate materials. Watch as the clerk unrolls a massive mappa mundi, a map of the known world painted on a single vast sheet of vellum. By lamplight, you can see seas filled with fantastic creatures, lands marked with tiny illustrations of their inhabitants, Jerusalem placed at the very centre of creation. The maps are stored in special cylindrical cases to prevent creasing. Some are kept flat between boards of smooth wood, weighted down to prevent curling. The clerk checks each one for signs of damage, tears that might spread, colours that might be fading, evidence of insect activity. He makes careful notes about which maps need attention, which will be passed to the appropriate craftsman come morning. Notice how the temperature in this room is slightly different from the main hall. Maps are particularly sensitive to humidity, so extra braziers burn here, and bags of quicklime hang in the corners to absorb moisture from the air. The clerks must balance the need for dryness against the danger of making the vellum too brittle. It's a delicate dance, adjusted season by season, even day by day. The night deepens, and you observe the changing of the watch. The first watchman hands over his lantern and keys to his replacement, along with a detailed report of everything observed during his shift. Was that corner of the roof leaking again? Did the suspicious scratching near the theology section turn out to be mice or just settling wood? Every detail matters, forming a continuous chain of vigilance that stretches back decades. The new watchman begins his rounds with the same methodical care as his predecessor. You notice he has his own particular habits, pausing to listen at certain points, running his hand along specific shelves to check for dampness. This intimate knowledge of the building and its contents can't be taught. It must be learned through years of patient observation. Move now to a small chamber off the main hall, where the library's catalogue is kept. In an age before comprehensive indexes, Finding a specific text required deep knowledge and careful organisation. The catalogue exists as a series of bound volumes, themselves precious books. You watch as a clerk updates the listings, adding new acquisitions in his careful hand. Each entry includes not just the title and author, but the book's location, physical description, and condition. The cataloguing system seems complex to modernise, but it served its purpose well. Books might be organised by subject, by donor, by size, or by some combination of these factors. The clerks who maintained these catalogues held the entire library in their heads, able to locate any volume from memory. They were the living indexes of their institutions. You're shown the donation records, equally carefully maintained. Medieval libraries grew through gifts, from wealthy patrons seeking to ensure prayers for their souls, from scholars leaving their personal collections to the institution that nurtured them, from religious houses sharing duplicate copies. Each donation was recorded with the donor's name, ensuring their generosity would be remembered. The night air grows colder still. Frost begins to form on the windows, creating delicate patterns visible in the lamplight. The custodians respond by adding more coals to the braziers and checking the protective coverings on books near the outer walls. Cold might preserve, but extreme cold brings its own dangers. Bindings can crack, pages become brittle. The nighttime caretakers must maintain a delicate balance. Watch as they prepare special warming boxes for the most vulnerable volumes. These are wooden cases with perforated sides, designed to be placed near heat sources without exposing the books directly to flames or hot coals. Inside, wrapped in layers of wool, rest ancient texts that might crumble if exposed to sudden temperature changes. The process of warming them must be gradual, gentle, taking hours to bring them to a safe temperature for handling. You notice one of the clerks mixing new ink for tomorrow's work. This too is a nighttime task, as the ink needs hours to settle before use. He grinds oat galls in a mortar, adding iron salts and gum arabic according to a formula passed down through generations. The resulting mixture is black as midnight, permanent as stone once it dries on the page. Different recipes produce different colours: brown from walnut hulls, red from vermilion, green from verdigris. The mixing must be done carefully. Too much iron and the ink will eat through the parchment over time. Too little and it will fade. The clerk strains the mixture through fine cloth, removing any gritty particles that might catch a scribe's pen. The finished ink goes into sealed pots, ready for the morning's work. Listen to the bells of a distant church marking the hours. In the medieval world, these bells structured time for everyone, but especially for those who worked through the night. Each bell reminds the library staff of their duties: when to change the watch, when to check the fires, when to perform the 100 small tasks that keep the collection safe. A junior custodian arrives with his weekly report on the library's physical condition. He's responsible for checking the building itself: the roof for leaks, the walls for cracks, the floors for signs of settling. Books are only as safe as the building that houses them. You follow as he demonstrates potential problem areas. Here, a beam shows signs of beetle damage. There, a window frame has warped, letting in drafts. Each issue is carefully noted for repair. The night continues its slow progress. You find yourself in the library's teaching room, where during the day young scribes learn their craft. Even empty, the room speaks of patient instruction. Practice sheets of parchment show repeated letters, each one an attempt to master the perfect form. On the walls hang examples of different scripts: the clear Carolingian minuscule, the angular Gothic textura, the flowing humanistic hand that would eventually give birth to our modern letter forms. Feel the weight of tradition in this space. Every scribe working today learned from a master who learned from a master before him, stretching back in an unbroken chain to the first monks who preserved classical learning through the dark centuries. The techniques they use, the materials they prepare, the very movements of their hands, all have been refined over generations. The senior knight custodian takes you to see the library's most closely guarded secrets, not just valuable books, but the tools and materials needed to create them. In locked chests rest unused sheets of purple parchment, once reserved for imperial documents. Tiny vials contain pigments worth more than gold, ultramarine from beyond the sea. Kermes red from crushing thousands of tiny insects. These materials await only the most important commissions. You examine the collection of exemplars, master copies from which other books are made. When a cathedral needs a new missal, or a wealthy merchant wants a book of hours, scribes work from these patterns. Each exemplar represents perfected text, checked and rechecked for errors. A mistake here would be reproduced dozens of times before anyone noticed. The night has reached its deepest point, that strange hour when time seems to pause. The library feels most alive now, paradoxically, in its quietest moment. You sense the weight of all those sleeping texts, each one containing someone's thoughts, prayers, observations, dreams. The custodians move through this forest of human knowledge like gentle shepherds, ensuring each flock member remains safe until morning. Watch as they perform one of the night's most important tasks, checking the oil levels in the lamps. Running out of oil could mean dangerous moments of darkness, fumbling with flint and steel, the risk of accident. Each lamp must have enough fuel to last until dawn, with some to spare. The oil they use is carefully filtered olive oil, chosen for its clean burning properties. No fish oil here, with its smoke and smell. A clerk shows you the library's collection of scrolls, older than most of the bound books. These require different storage methods, special tubes and cases that allow them to rest without stress on the ancient papyrus or parchment. Some are so fragile they can only be unrolled on specially humid days when the material becomes slightly more flexible. Even then, the process might take hours, unrolling just an inch at a time. The variety of texts in a medieval library might surprise you. Yes, there are religious works in abundance. Bibles, commentaries, saints' lives, books of hours. But there are also medical treatises describing herbs and their uses, astronomical texts mapping the movements of planets, historical chronicles recording the deeds of kings and peoples. There are books of law, books of philosophy, even books of poetry and romance. You pause at a section containing Arabic texts, testament to the complex cultural exchanges of the medieval world. These manuscripts travelled far to reach this northern library, perhaps through Spain, where Christian, Muslim and Jewish scholars once worked side by side, or through Italian merchants who traded with the East. The night clerks treat these foreign texts with the same reverence as their Latin works, understanding that knowledge has no single homeland. Feel the gradual shifting of the night toward morning. Though dawn is still hours away, experienced night workers can sense its approach. The quality of darkness changes. The building's sounds shift subtly. Even the behaviour of the mice in the walls follows patterns the custodians have learned to read. The morning preparation begins early. Fires must be built up so the scriptorium will be warm when the scribes arrive. Fresh water must be drawn for mixing paints and inks. The protective coverings must come off the books in order, starting with those most likely to be requested. Everything must be ready for the seamless transition from night watch to day work. You observe the careful records being made of the night's events. Everything must be documented, which lamps burned more oil than usual, suggesting the need for wick trimming, which sections seemed damper than normal, what sounds were heard and when. This information forms part of the library's institutional memory, helping future generations of caretakers maintain the collection. The final hours before dawn are perhaps the most crucial. Tired workers might make mistakes. Attention might wander. Yet the custodians maintain their vigilance, knowing that more accidents happen in these vulnerable moments than at any other time. They move perhaps a bit more slowly, but with the same careful attention that has characterized the entire night. A young apprentice arrives early, eager to begin his day's work. The night custodian takes time to share some wisdom with him, showing him tricks learned over years of service. How to judge if a binding is becoming too dry by the sound it makes when opened. How to spot the early signs of bookworm damage. How to tell if a manuscript has been consulted recently by tiny disturbances in the dust patterns around it. Listen to the first birds beginning their pre-dawn chorus outside. The natural world provides its own timepiece for those who know how to read it. Soon, the bell for matins will ring, calling the religious community to their first prayers of the day. The library will transform again from a nighttime sanctuary to a bustling centre of learning and scholarship. But for now, in these last moments of darkness, you stand with the night custodians in their quiet kingdom. They have kept faith with their charges through another long night. Every book remains safe, every manuscript preserved for another day. Tomorrow's readers will find their texts exactly as they left them, never knowing the careful hands that guarded them through the darkness. The lamplight flickers, casting dancing shadows across the spines of countless volumes. Each shadow might be a story, a prayer, a fragment of accumulated wisdom waiting for daylight to release it. The medieval library at night is more than a building or a collection. It's a trust maintained, a vigil kept, a bridge between the knowledge of the past and the needs of the future. As the first grey light touches the eastern windows, the night watch prepares to hand over their charges. They have been faithful custodians of humanity's written memory. In a few hours, scholars will again fill these halls with quiet activity. But for now, in these last moments before dawn, the library belongs to those who guard it through the darkness, ensuring that the light of knowledge never truly goes out. Thank you for joining us on this peaceful journey through a watchful evening in a medieval library. If you enjoyed our work and are still awake, check out our other medieval content. And if you've fallen asleep, please relax and enjoy the campfire.